Hi, everybody. My name is Stephenie Peterson, and I'm a middle grade author. I'm the author of Grace's Ghosts, hanging out back behind my shoulder. I can't point myself correctly. And I am so excited today to be able to interview J.L. Esplin. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. Who wrote a really great book called 96 Miles. And why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your book.
Okay. Well, I'm J.L. Esplin. My name is Jenny, but J.L. Esplin is my author name. I'm streaming this from my son's bedroom, by the way, and I just realized he hasn't changed the decor in here since 2008. Very dated. But so I'm an author of this book, middle grade book, 96 Miles. And I live in Las Vegas. This is obviously my debut book. What should I say?
Why don't you, can you tell us a little bit about the book?
Yes. Okay. Well, I guess I should say first that I have been writing for a really long time. I wrote my first manuscript in 2002 and had been trying to get published for that amount of time, for a really long time.
Yeah.
So I've had a lot of failed manuscripts, I guess you could say, a lot of rejection. And then, so when I started writing this manuscript, I had just shelved my previous manuscript that had been rejected by every agent, and so I just thought I need to come up with a new idea. I need something new. I know it was time to start over, that process of just starting over again when a manuscript isn't quite going anywhere. So this childhood memory came to me of a story with my dad, who had taken me and my siblings around the house and was showing us where we could find water in the case of an emergency. So he was kind of showing us the hot water heater and how to turn off the gas if there was an earthquake and things like that. And then he gathered us into the bathroom, at the end and said, you can also drink the water in the toilet. You just have to boil it first. And we were all just like, that's gross, horrifying. We would never do that. We would just go ahead and die, I guess. I don't know. So anyway, so that story kind of popped into my head, and then the first sentence came in my head. The first sentence of this book, which is exactly the same sentence that I wrote down, that I typed out, and I had no idea where the story was going from there. I just kept writing about these two brothers who were scavenging water from a toilet, and I didn't even know what the story was about, but in fact, I remember at the really early on, I was like, should this be a funny, humorous, get you drinking water? I don't know, some kind of prank story. But it ended up, very quickly, I was like, no, this is a survival story. And so, yeah, that's where it came from my dad. Eventually, the story, the whole plot and everything started to come together in my head. But I would say most of the first chapter, when I was writing it, I had no idea what the story was. I was just kind of making it up, which I guess is how it works. But yeah.
Well, yeah.
So
I mean, I'm always impressed with the people who do know exactly what they're writing when they start, because that's not my process at all. I have an idea, but not. I have friends who bullet point every single chapter before they start. It's not for me. So
yeah, it's not really for me either. I wish I was. I want to be that kind of writer, but I'm not.
I think what the right process is whatever one works for you. Yeah. So what's that? Do you mind sharing the first line that came to mind? Yeah.
Yes, I have it memorized, but I'm going to read it because I'll probably I have probably the first chapter memorized from going over it so many times, editing it.
Yeah.
But it's, Dad always said, if things get desperate, it's okay to drink the water in the toilet bowl.
That's a good first line.
Yeah, I guess.
I think so. It makes you want to keep reading. I mean, That's especially when you're going through the whole querying submission.
I hope so.
You froze for a minute.
I did. Okay.
Okay. Well, now you're back. So, but yeah, there's so much emphasis put on that first line when you're going through the querying and the submission and all of that, trying to make people want to keep reading the book. And so I've thought a lot about first lines. I spent quite a bit of time kind of obsessing over it when I rewrote the first chapter of Grace's Ghosts. I don't even know how many times. I wrote and rewrote that chapter. And so I used to go into bookstores and just open up the first page of middle grade books and read the first line. And so I've thought a lot about it. But
I know I kind of got lucky with this because normally I would like just obsess over the first, and in my previous manuscripts and even the one I'm working on now, I'm like, is that first sentence like great, and so this was really lucky that it just like the sentence popped into my head and like fully formed and never even did anything with it. So never really came.
Yeah. It's good that it came to you that way. I think that's really cool. I've had lots of different concepts come to me and we're in strange ways like that. That not so far first line. I've had woken up in the middle of the night. I know exactly what I'm going to write, or like comp titles, in my head, that. And I know I have a story to write, but first line hasn't been one thus far, but who knows?
I hope it happens for me again one day.
Most of my books I've had to rewrite that first line. Actually though, now I'm thinking, one that's on submission right now, not yet. Anyway, we'll see when an editor hopefully picks it up. That one, the first line did stay the same through several edits. So, maybe that one will stay the same. But Grace's Ghost went from, it started out in third person omniscient and went to first person. So obviously there were lots of changes in that. And nothing could really stay the same.
Yeah. My book went from young adult to middle grade.
Oh, that's a big change too.
A lot of the first chapter is still the same, even going from young adult to middle grade. So maybe my voice kind of sounded young. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think too, a lot of people, that young adult middle grade line is really hard to find, the sweet spot. And I thought maybe when I started writing Grace's Ghost, it might be YA. And the more I wrote, I was like, no, things I wanted to do. Her best friend is a ghost cat. That's not YA. I toned it back. It's like, okay, no, that's not what I was writing. Never mind.
Well, it's good that you knew that you like recognized that and kind of changed it. So
finding the voice for the age category that you're writing for is so important, because if you get it wrong, you're not going to get anywhere with your book, unfortunately, no matter how good the writing is. If you're aiming at the wrong age level with the story, it just I've read a lot of young adult books where I'm like, this should have been a middle grade. And and I think too, like a lot of times you'll go to a library or a bookstore and something that is clearly middle grade is marked as YA. Like I just happened to notice right before the world shut down, my daughter got The Truth About Jellyfish. I don't know if you've read that from our library, and it's marked as YA, and I'm like, it's really not a YA book though. Like it's a good book. It's not YA, but it's got the YA sticker on it, and librarians are paying more attention than most people, but there's just this weird, people don't know what to do with middle grade or where it fits. And
my book has been shelved in YA in a couple of libraries. Like I've noticed it has like the Y, not the junior, but the YA. So, and mine's like an upper middle grade. And so I think it's kind of like, straddling that line, but my main character is 13.
Yeah. So. And that really is that mystery age that they don't know what to do with. Actually, my main character was 13 when I first wrote it, and I made her 12 just to like get rid of any questioning. I was like, it's just easier. She can be 12. But I did yeah, it's that upper middle grade can be a little confusing.
Yeah.
And I have seen like reviews about my book out online and whatnot that will call it YA, and I'm like, well, it's not, but that's okay.
Yeah. I think a lot of people don't even know what the category middle grade, like people who aren't really in publishing don't recognize.
Yeah, I think in a lot of people's mind, it goes from the early chapter books, Magic Tree House, and then everything after that is YA,
and they're all young adults.
So I get it. I don't think before I started writing, even though I read a lot of middle grade, that I knew the term, but before I started writing it, I knew I was writing a book, and I'm like, well, I want it to be somewhere between like Magic Tree House and Harry Potter. What age is that? Like, what is what? I don't want it to be the little tiny short, easy to read books, but and so I had to start researching. So I think just a lot of people don't know, but it is.
And even middle grade is so, like the difference between like an 8-year-old and a 13-year-old is kind of
huge.
So it is a little like there's middle grade that's really short, like 30,000 words or something. And mine 96 miles is like 71,000 words. How long is Grace's Ghost?
Just under 50,000 words. It's like 49,500 or something. 50,000 words.
And that's like the sweet spot, for middle grade, like right there in the middle.
That was my goal. I wanted to aim for like the middle of the range when I was writing. And I was quite happy when I got through drafting. That's about what I was aiming for. I didn't want it to get too long because it's really easy in fantasy to start world building and just go out of control. And all of a sudden you've focused too much on your world building and the story gets bogged down by all those details. So, but word count's a weird thing too, because there are rules, but they're always broken.
Yeah.
So what was the process like for you to your path to publication?
Okay. Well, so like I said, I started like ages ago, and so it has been kind of a long path, but so I wrote this and I started it in 2013. And finished it in 2014. That's how long it's taken to get here. Right when I finished it, I got an agent with it right away. I kind of knew, like, when I was writing it, I had a feeling that I was going to this was going to be my book that kind of got me my foot in the door. So anyway, I shouldn't say that. That sounds like, I don't know, arrogant or something.
You should be proud of yourself. You should be proud of yourself.
Yeah. You just have a feeling, because I knew I'd written a lot of crappy stuff. So anyway, so I got an agent right away, and then I kind of did this little agent swap. That agent kind of didn't work out, and I got another one right away. And then I went on submission for the entire year of 2015. And so, like I said, that as a young adult. So this was a young adult novel with my agent, and I kept getting into like the acquisitions stage. Like an editor would take it to their acquisitions meeting, and it was just kind of getting shot down. So my main character is a boy, and that young adult boy market is not big. There aren't very many. So at the end of the year, so I had a lot of interest in it, but it just wasn't, kind of getting anywhere. So at the end of the year, I had an editor take it to their acquisitions meeting. And this time she contacted me and my agent and said, would you be willing to rewrite this? We love the book, but the YA market for boy main characters is really small. Would you be willing, or whatever, however she worded it, rewrite this as a middle grade? And I was like, yeah, I'll do that. I had a couple other little things had been, ideas thrown out there after it, going to acquisitions with different editors. But this one felt right. It felt like it would totally work as a middle grade. And it felt like the voice was there, because I have this kind of young voice, younger, but at middle grade, I'd probably sound older, but with young adult, I sounded younger. So I so I spent an entire year rewriting it. I had to rewrite it 3 times. I rewrote it the first time. They still sounded too old. It was like I had to take out some stuff and then rewrote it again, rewrote it a 3rd time. At that point, the editor was like, okay, it's there. It's middle grade. It's great. But unfortunately, we're not going to take it. So like, okay. And so then the next year, so this would be 2000. Oh my gosh, is it 2017? Whatever year it was. I think it's early 2017. My agent took it out as a middle grade a manuscript now with all new middle grade editors and kind of started over again. And it got a lot of interest again right away. And I ended up getting, offers from 3 different publishers. And it went to auction, which was really exciting, but also scary and nerve-wracking. It's like that thing that you hope it goes to auction, but then when it does, it's like, this is terrifying. And you have to kind of make scary decisions about what direction to go. But I ended up, I think, making the best choice. I picked the editor that I felt like I totally trusted her and I felt like we clicked. So anyway, and then it's taken to 2020 to get here. So it was sold in 2017. Gosh, it's so slow.
It's such a slow process, isn't it?
So it's kind of funny because when so this is like, it's about these 2 brothers, and you can see on the cover here, the camera's gone. They're a massive blackout hits the Western United States, and they live in middle of nowhere, Nevada. And they have to walk 96 miles out of this, little town out in the middle of nowhere with no gas station, no grocery stores or anything, to get help. Their dad is away from town when the blackout hits. I'm really rusty at pitching this, as you can see. But anyway, so when I wrote this in 2013, when I started in 2013, I live in Las Vegas. My parents live in Boise, Idaho. So I drive up the state of Nevada like multiple times a year, for over 20 years now, to visit my parents in Idaho. And there's nothing else. I drive on this 2-lane highway. I actually drive on the highway that's in this book here, the 318. And there's these signs that say, kind of like a warning sign that say, no facilities, no gas station, no toilets, nothing out here for the next, 100 and something miles. Just be prepared for that. So, but then as you're driving on these like desolate highways, there'll be like a little community of houses out there, like very small towns with no gas stations or grocery stores or anything. So that just always intrigued me, like, oh, how do you live out here? Or how do you end up out here? And how different their life must be from, mine in Vegas, right. But we're in the same state. So anyway, when I wrote this in 2013 on this particular highway, there's that sign, nothing out there. Well, then it took so long to get published, 2020, somewhere like maybe in 2018 or 19, I can't remember the exact year. I'm driving on that highway and they built a rest stop out there with like toilets. So really, really kind of frustrating that I'm like, it just took too long to get this book published. So I had to put an author's note in here because it bothered me so much.
Right.
By the way, there were no toilets when I wrote this.
Yeah, it was accurate at the time that I wrote it. It's just publishing is slow. We have Otis Community Public Library asking if we can explain what going to auction is.
Oh, sorry. It means that you have multiple offers from different publishers. And so your agent will set up an auction, like kind of get it kind of bidding up, so for this deal, I ended up getting a 2-book deal for a second book that is not that I hadn't written at the time or anything there, so they just kind of, I don't know, got on the phone with different editors and had to kind of make a decision. It took about, maybe 2 or 3 weeks of back and forth between different editors with my agent. kind of working out the details.
That had to be a nerve-wracking process for you.
Yeah. I'm really
exciting, but still just like wondering what's coming next. So you said it was a 2-book deal. Have you, when does the next book come out?
Well, it's supposed to come out next year, but I'm still writing it because I am just doing horrible. So, but I've kind of turned this leaf, or turn the page. What is it? Turn the leaf, turn the page. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I'm doing so much better with it now. Anyway, so we're kind of on a little speedy track. Hopefully it comes out in 2021 and not.
That's exciting.
But I'm loving it now. But oh my gosh, early this year was just, it's been a rough year for everybody.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah. But yeah, so it's hard to just stay focused and kind of, love it and get the work done. But now
I agree. And Otis Community Library followed up and said, it sounds like an author's version of Sports Draft. Exciting.
Yeah,
a little bit. Yeah. So are you able to tell us about your new book yet, or are you not able to talk about it?
I don't know if I'm sure I'm allowed to. I don't know if it's a rule. I don't know. It's like it takes place in the 80s. It's like I wanted to kind of write like a Ready Player One, but like a middle grade version, but that's actually set in the 80s. So it's kind of a little bit where the little desire where I wanted to write came from. But it takes place during the video game crash of like 1984. So this is after Atari, but before Nintendo. It was like the dark ages of video games. And so it's like this fun adventure book, I don't know. I'll leave it at that. But
sometime when we're not live, we should talk. My book that's on submission right now, though set in the present-ish, is involves a 1980s video game theme that I think you probably enjoy.
We'll have to
talk about
manuscripts, or you're already done.
I'm done. It's on submission. So hopefully sometime soon. Things are so slow right now with publishing, with everything, because the world is shut down. But I've been on submission for a while, and hopefully sometime soon somebody enjoys it. But we can totally swap, or we'll talk when we're not live. But I think that's fun that we have some similar things going on. Mine is also about epilepsy and some other things too. But
my son has epilepsy.
Oh, 2 of my children have epilepsy. So
oh really?
Yeah,
we'll definitely have to talk off.
Yes, definitely. But so that's an important topic for us, obviously. So trying to steer it back on track. How many manuscripts did you write before you got the one that got published, or wrote the one that got published?
Okay, so I would say 7.
Yeah.
Okay, but one of my manuscripts I kind of redid. I took it from young adult to middle grade, back to young adult.
Freckles. Want my freckles?
Okay.
Mommy.
My daughter's coming in. So that was kind of like beginning to end rewrite, kind of starting fresh.
Yeah.
And actually the very first manuscript I ever wrote was for adults.
Oh?
It's so not me.
I tried that once.
Yeah.
I think I know there are people who can do both, but I tried once to write a manuscript for adults, and I was being really good about it because it was a thriller, and you really do have to plot a thriller. And I spent months plotting it, and I got like 3 chapters in, and I was so miserable writing the thing. And I was like, why? I can't. I want to go back to writing for kids where there's hope, and I read a lot of fantasy, so I can make my world full of unicorns and mermaids if I want to, and why do I want to write about Seattle where I grew up, which was I was getting really sick of describing rain.
Yeah.
You know what? I don't have to write this. I don't have to if I don't like it. And so it's still there, and I think it would be a good book, but I don't know. I thought about maybe trying to tweak it to make it YA, and maybe I'd enjoy it a little bit more.
Yeah.
It's there. I have my notes. I have my sad 3 chapters that I never got further than. But, I think it takes a very skilled person to be able to write for both kids and adults. I write picture books. I've written chapter books. I write middle grade, but I cannot force myself to the adult books. So yeah, I'm with you. I think it's so common, and that's why I wanted to ask for authors to go through lots of projects before they get published. I think a lot of times, I know before I was published, and when I wanted to, I would watch a lot of these kind of author interviews and things, and you hear the stories. So people like to share the stories. Oh, it was my first book and it was easy, and that's so not how it usually goes. So many people spend a long time trying to get a book published, and I want anybody watching out there who's trying to get published to know that it happens to most of us.
Yeah, so. I think you hear this all the time. Like, people say, if I can get published, then anybody can. But like, really, for reals, if I can get published, then anybody can. You have to just really, you have to want it. If you want it bad enough, then it'll happen for you for sure. So I actually didn't even read when I was a kid. So like a total late bloomer when it comes to books at all. So I didn't start like reading until like my 20s. I mean, like I could read, but I wasn't a good reader. Growing like as a kid, when I first started learning to read, I didn't really pick it up very quickly. I was not a good reader. I was always kind of placed in like a special reading group outside the classroom, and that just I kind of just took on that label, I guess, of just I can't read kind of kid, and that lasted all the way through middle school, high school, into college, and so I definitely got a really late start on all of this. It wasn't even on my radar to be an author because I hated books. As growing up, I would never. I mean, I was like, that sounds like an awful job, so torture people with books. So I and in my early 20s, I discovered reading, and it kind of, this light bulb went off in my head, like, oh, I can read. I don't know why I was thinking I'm just like not a good reader, or I don't know, and became obsessed with reading and read for 2 years, just constantly, probably 3 or 4 books a week, because I had quit my job to stay home, and my husband was in school and working, and so we were dead broke, and that was my entertainment, was reading. And then after about 2 years of obsessively reading, that's when I'm like, I'm gonna write a book. So it was a little crazy to go from like never even reading to then just like suddenly discovering this love of books. And then within, 2 years later, writing my first manuscript. So you can imagine how bad it was. I pull it up sometimes and read it, and it's hilarious. The dialogue's funny, but the rest of the book is ridiculous. But and I actually like queried it and everything. So anyway, it took me. So when I say that it took me from 2002 all the way until I got my agent in into 2014, but really 2015. So that's like, 13 years before I got my agent. But I also was kind of already not really I hadn't been growing up reading all my life, and I hadn't, been writing, all my life. So, so that's to say that if someone's watching this at the same time and thinking, oh, is this going to take me 13 years or is this going to take me like, 20 years or way over a decade? I was definitely starting from like below, In fact, I'll even tell you this. When I had already been querying out different manuscripts, and I actually would have agents request them and read my manuscripts. And I decided I was going to go back to school because I hadn't finished college. I dropped out of college. And I'm like, I got to go back to school so that I can put this in my bio when I query that I actually have, a college degree. I had nothing. I'm just, no qualifications or anything. I thought I needed that.
Right.
And so I went back to school, and I had to take the English placement exam, because it'd been so long since I'd been in school. And I was like, oh, I got this in the bag. I'm like, I'm a writer. I can totally write this amazing essay. And I go in there to take it, and there's no spell check, and I'm a terrible, terrible speller. And I'm also really was bad at grammar and a lot of things probably. And I wrote this essay, and I failed that.
Oh, no.
Exam. And I had to take a non-college credit English class to even start. So and that was like, I'd probably been writing for 5 years or so.
Yeah. Well, yeah. We all start somewhere, and I think that's really encouraging for people to know that it's like anything else. You can learn how to do it. You just have to put time in, put time into. And there are no spelling
errors in this one because it's been
I just finished reading your book, 96 Miles, and it was great. That's from Molly.
Thank you.
So that's nice. So see, all of that work paid off, all those years of trying to improve your writing. And I think it's very cool that you came to reading as an adult. I was the opposite. I was the kid staying up late, holding my book up to the window to try to get the street light so I could try to read it while I was supposed to be asleep. And years later, I found out my mom totally knew and didn't care, but I thought I was being very sneaky. But I would stay up late reading. So I was on the other end of it, but I think.
Yeah. So did you know you wanted to be an author?
Yeah, I was really little the first time I said that. It was like, as soon as I realized that was a job that someone did because I just loved books, it's like, oh, that's it. That's what I want to do. Let me write the books. And then it took longer to come back to that as an adult, because it's one of those jobs that people tell you, oh, you can't do that. That's not an easy job to get. Nobody really does that.
What was your timeline or your process for getting?
Well, I did things a little differently. So I wrote a few manuscripts that I abandoned. 3, maybe 4 that were close to finished. Lots of others that I started, and then I couldn't even count all the ones that I got a few chapters in and just was like, I'm distracted. But then this must have been 2011 or 2012. My husband he's a game developer, and he was talking about video games and how they didn't have strong female characters. Huh?
Oh, that's really handy with your.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. He's been able to help me with a lot of things. But so he was talking about video games and how he didn't like the female characters that they had. And how he wanted to come up with a video game that he'd want our daughter to play. Because a lot of the female video game characters, especially back then, were weak, rescued, or were scantily clad, or they weren't anything. Or games that were marketed towards girls were like, make some cupcakes, here's some puppies, want something with substance. And so he's like, come up with an idea and I'll make a game. Then I started writing out this stuff about this little girl who was a time traveler and met women who changed the world. And I wrote and I realized that I had a book and not a video game. So I wrote and self-published 2 books about this character, Nellie Nova. And I self-published because I thought then that if I were to traditionally publish, I would never be able to have my husband make the video game of it, because we're still like, well, maybe we'll do that. I didn't, but now that I know more about publishing, I realized that I didn't have to self-publish, that, you know, I could have, if I had a good agent, we could have written that into a contract, but I wanted to be sure that we had the right to make this video game. So before I did this, Grace's Ghost is my traditional debut, but it's my third published book, because I did self-publish just 2 other books. So I went by kind of a weird way where I, you know, bypassed the whole, you know, once I actually had a book that I felt proud of, then I just went, you know, I went with an editor. I didn't just like stick it up online without a lot. There was a lot of work involved, but so I had a weird process going in. And even then, when with Grace's Ghosts, I queried it to a lot of agents, and it was hit and miss. And I'd get requests and it wasn't going where I wanted it to. And I got feedback that said, you need, from multiple agents, and I finally listened, that you need to change this from third person omniscient to first person, because it's just making it hard to connect with the character. And so I did. I went and rewrote after, I don't know, I 30 queries in and finally start listening. And I rewrote it, and then I entered it in PitMad, and my publisher liked the tweet. And so I didn't have an agent for Grace's Ghosts. I went into that with the publisher instead of like, you know, then going on submission. So then for the book that is on submission now, I got an agent between accepting the offer of publication for Grace's Ghosts and it coming out. Which I got an agent. So I'm like, I didn't do anything in the order that they tell you you're supposed to do things. It's been a weird process. I should at some point maybe do a video and explain that in detail, because I think it gives me an interesting perspective on the whole publishing as a whole, because I've done a little bit of everything. So did
you get your agent through just like traditional querying?
I did. Well, I found her on Twitter, but I didn't, it wasn't like a contest or anything. I just, her bio said my agent is Jessica Reno of Metamorphosis, and she really wants to focus on underrepresented voices and invisible illness. And since my book is very much about epilepsy, even though it's also about video games, I thought she might be interested, and she was. And so that was that was a very short process querying that book, because I think it was maybe like 6 or 7 agents that I queried, and I, you know, I didn't expect to get someone interested that quickly after my first experience. But I knew, even though it was early on, I wanted to work with her. I didn't want to like keep querying it and see, because I just knew that she really saw the book for what it was. And since it was something that was so important to her as well, the invisible illness in middle grade, that it was, it was a really good fit. So it was kind of nice, after having gone through a lot of rejection and revision with Grace's Ghosts, to then, get an agent quickly on this other project. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So kind of, we all take our own path. Well, mine is definitely not the story you hear. And hopefully we'll see how, I'm still doing the submission thing. It's a weird process, submission.
Oh yeah. It's awful.
Yeah.
Submission, it's like you're just not feeling yourself or something when you're on submission. So
it's a lot of limbo, just waiting. And then COVID has only slowed down everything. But I just we'll see. I haven't heard back from any of them in a while, but that's to be it. My agent follows up, and she, they're all behind because of COVID, and it is what it is. Well, when I hear, I'll hear. It gives me time to, in theory, write other things, not so much in practice. I don't know. It's been harder to write lately for me. I hear people who say, "Oh, well, I have all this extra time and I'm able." Like, well, good for you, but no.
I know. Well, I actually this is my first time on the internet since besides checking my email. So I check my email, like any and like I check texts and stuff like that. But I took the internet off my laptop. I had to put it back on, for this. I mean, like disabled it or whatever. And that has been awesome, just to kind of be offline and then just kind of live in the world of my story. And so I think that's what I'll have to do every time,
Yeah, that would be so useful. I write in Google Docs because I'm obsessed with the idea of my projects getting lost and it automatically saves.
I have a writer friend who does the same thing.
Yeah. I should like find a way to disable at least social media though. I know there are like apps you can install on your computer so that they won't let you get on like Facebook and Twitter between certain hours.
I installed an app called Cold Turkey.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can check that one out, but I actually didn't even use it. I'm like, I don't need this. I'll just turn it off.
Well, if that works for you, I mean, that might help me. There's just, with COVID, there's so much information coming in, and I feel like I have to stay on top of it all, as if I can do anything about.
I know,
but I do feel the need, and it's more like checking that than really Facebook distracting me or Twitter distracting me. It's just like I feel the need to know all the statistics and the latest studies. I'm not someone, I'm a writer. I write children's fantasy books. Why do I think I have to know it all? But I
know. I probably would have still been getting online. I under like a deadline, so I had to kind of like, okay, I got to figure my way out of this thing. But it's also, when you're writing and I'm just kind of like discovering this. I mean, it seems obvious, so I should know this, but you have so many things inputting, Netflix and, news stories and, social media, like all this stuff kind of coming in. It's hard to then put anything out because it's just it's hard to stay focused on one thing. And so I just realized I had to take out everything. So I can't even read. I'm not even letting myself read or like watch TV or stream anything at all. So, which I'm kind of bummed because I got an alert today that the Hunger Games book that I pre-ordered is going to arrive. I don't know if and I'm like either today or tomorrow, whenever it comes out. Oh, I guess tomorrow. Tomorrow, Tuesday.
Yeah, tomorrow's Tuesday. Yeah, so it should be tomorrow.
And I won't be able to read it.
Oh, that's rough. Gives you motivation to finish, right?
Yeah.
How close are you to finishing this project, do you think?
Well, my deadline is July 1st. So, so I'll be trying to stay offline and off social media until then, and just maybe kind of popping in when I need to. But
well, that's impressive. And I hope that works out for you. Deadlines are scary.
No, I know.
When I was on deadline for Grace's Ghosts, I obsessed. And I actually beat my deadlines, all of them. I didn't even get up, but like, it's because I went into obsession mode and would not do anything else. And I was like, my hair was a mess and my kids were running around causing all sorts of problems in the neighborhood. I'm like, well, I'm a deadline. What can I say? I got to get this done. But
where did you say? Are you in North Carolina?
Yeah, I'm in North Carolina.
North Carolina, and you're originally from Seattle?
Yeah, I'm originally from Seattle. Where are you at?
I'm in Las Vegas.
Oh, right. You said that. Yeah.
Yeah. So good weather outside for kids playing out, and
not today. It's been where there's a storm system coming in on the coast, and even though I'm inland a lot, we're just graying. It looks like it should be raining, but it's not, and it's just kind of humid and nasty and drizzling off and on. And then in this whole week we're supposed to have rain and storms off and on. So but last week it was beautiful last week. Which is good because with the outside being the only safe place to go, there's just not a whole lot of options for the kids. So we've tried to, hike and play in the backyard, and when they get antsy, I make them go jump on the trampoline, start getting too bouncy while we're trying to get schoolwork done or whatever. You go outside. I can't deal with you right now. So,
yeah. Well, it's sweltering hot here, so we can't.
Yeah. It's pretty much year round, right?
We have an awesome like spring, winter time. It just, but then summer starts in like, I don't know, April. I don't know. Okay. It's, and then it kind of gets actually, it kind of starts to get maybe warm in February, I would say. And then it starts to get a little cool off a little, maybe in March and April, but yeah, I like it. I like the heat.
Yes. Yeah.
But it's not, we're going to go outside and play in the park, Yeah.
So. Between Seattle and North Carolina, I lived in Texas, and we got more tolerable time than that. But there's definitely a good few months where there's no going outside in Texas. Yeah. I'd say I was in the Dallas area, and I'd say from about June through mid-September, there's just maybe in the morning for a few hours, maybe. Yeah. You get lucky. Or after the sun goes down, you might be able to sit on your back patio with a drink or something, but you don't want to be running around outside a lot of the time. You get used to it, but and I actually do prefer the heat. Having lived in 3 very different climates, I actually liked living in Texas weather-wise more than anywhere else, because I don't like being cold.
Yeah, me neither. I'm a desert girl, I guess.
Yeah. I've definitely warm weather. I haven't done full-on desert, but I think I'd probably be pretty happy.
Yeah.
So do you have ideas for future books after you finish what you're drafting, or are you just so in that zone that you?
Well, right now I'm kind of in the zone, I guess, but I definitely have like maybe a manuscript that I want to go back to that, that I can fix, that I love. And so that's probably what I will do next. After I'm done here, I would go back to an old manuscript.
Yeah.
That I started in 2004, a long time ago. And now that I can, a little better, I think I'm going to try redoing that one. Or maybe I'll come up with a new idea. I don't know. We'll see.
I like the idea of returning to something that that you wrote before. And I know everything I've written, like currently I have 2 on submission. I have a middle grade and a picture book. But I've written, and my agent is going to hopefully eventually try to place another 8. So.
Oh, wow. Another 8?
Another 8. Yeah.
8 books?
8 books. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Well, picture books, let's be fair. There are 5 picture books in that. So.
Okay.
Picture books.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's 9. It's 9. It's 9 more books, because I have the picture books, and then I have I have 2 chapter books, and then more middle grade. I've read it, but picture books are short, and then the chapter books as well short. It's a lot. And while the strategy has been to focus on 1 picture book and 1 middle grade, and then hopefully we'll be able to sell more of them when a deal is struck. But those books that are just kind of sitting there, I miss them. So I like the idea of returning to something that you've written and you hope, because I'd have to
really redo it. Yeah, I mean it's pretty bad. I'd have to the idea is really good. That's a good idea. Just it's poorly executed.
Well, but that's fixable. It's harder to fix a bad idea.
That's true.
Something can be beautifully written, but if the idea isn't good, it's just going to be boring. So
yeah, that's true.
That's very exciting. Well, I'm going to open up and see if any of the viewers have any questions. And if you're watching now, you can type your question on the side, and we can answer it for you. See, sometimes they get shy and they don't want to ask. Let's see, I'm not seeing anything pop up. We'll give it a minute. Okay, well, since no one wants to ask any questions, we'll go ahead and wrap up. And if you were interested in what you heard about 96 Miles, it's currently out, right? It's been out since January, is that correct?
February.
February. And anywhere you can buy books, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So and maybe support your local indie if you can, or your local indie bookshop if you can, and get yourself a copy of 96 Miles. Jenny, it's been so nice talking with you. And
thank you. Thank you, Stephenie. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye.